Today's subject is Daniel's 70 weeks. Most people think that Daniel's 70 weeks has a gap of undetermined length between the 69th and 70th week. There's a big hole there, and various things happen in that big gap. Where do they actually get that idea from? Is that something that you can really discern from the book of Daniel, particularly chapter 9, verses 24 through 27? Do those verses actually demand that there be a gap in that 70-week period? No. There's nothing in this text that says there's a gap there. Yet, that is a predominant view taught by Bible teachers today, by Protestants. And what I find fascinating about that is it was first introduced by a Jesuit priest by the name of Ribera. Ribera was part of the Counter-Reformation, and his job was to come up with some prophecies, some ways of looking at prophecy, end-time scenarios that took the Catholic Church off the Antichrist hot seat, so to speak. It was the idea that if they could create the perception that the Catholic Church was not the Antichrist, because that's what the Reformation, that's what the Reformers believed. And that is what the church before them believed too. It has always been the view of the church that Caesarean Rome was passed on to Papal Rome, and that was the Antichrist system. And that unveiling of the Antichrist system was accomplished when the first Pope arose, when that torch was passed from Caesarean Rome to Papal Rome. Ribera created this gap theory in those 70 weeks, because what that meant is Protestants who held that view that the papacy was Antichrist didn't have to worry about that until this 7-year treaty came about. And they would know that the Antichrist was the person who made this 7-year treaty. And furthermore, Ribera paved the way for this idea that the church would be raptured out before any of that mattered anyway. So this idea was picked up by another priest by the name of Bellarmine, who also wrote prolifically on it. It was also picked up and carried on by another Catholic Jesuit priest by the name Manuel Lacunza, who posed as a Jewish rabbi, a born-again Jewish rabbi, if you like. They all wrote the same kind of end-time Jesuit Futurism / eschatology. That eschatology was adopted by Irving. Irving was the founder of the Apostolic Catholic Church, and he's the guy who translated Manuel Lacunza's work into English. And then from there he disseminated that into his church, where a young lady, supposedly Mary MacDonald, had a vision confirming this pre-tribulation rapture idea. We have a legacy now of this idea being promoted and pushed and making an inroad through this Apostolic Catholic Church, then ending up in the Scofield Reference Bible eventually, which became the foundation for most Baptist churches and many early Protestant churches as well, in the late 1800s and early 1900s. So there's a legacy of this gap in the 70 weeks of Daniel that goes back to a Jesuit priest and not before. And that motive is very clear. Create a gap so that the Protestants do not view the Catholic Church as Antichrist, and therefore it'll be that much easier for Protestants to come back to Mamahor. Because Mamahor can't be the Antichrist. Protestants would eventually adopt the idea that we have more to fear from this future Antichrist than we have from our Catholic brothers and sisters. This is the foundation of ecumenism. We can trace this all back to how these 70 weeks are handled. And here's the interesting thing. If those 70 weeks are contiguous,